Hello, Namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. If you're dealing with Monday blues, spare a thought for China. They have a mountain of debt. Some $8.3 trillion. $8.3 trillion worth of debt, plus bad loans from the Belt and Road Initiative. When this bubble bursts, China will trigger a financial pandemic. We'll bring you the numbers. Meanwhile, in Pakistan, a Chinese national has been arrested for blasphemy. There are protests on the streets, angry mobs are out because this man is said to have insulted Allah. In Saudi Arabia, America has drawn a line in the sand. Regional realignment is fine, but hosting the Hamas is not. A delegation was supposed to visit the Saudis. Now it has been cancelled, reportedly under US pressure. And there's a leak in the ocean. It could lead to a massive earthquake, even shift our poles. We'll tell you all about it. The headlines first. Tensions continue in the Taiwan Strait. A US warship sails through the waters, separating Taiwan from mainland China. It comes just days after Beijing staged war games. The Americans have called it a routine transit. Chinese ambassador to the Philippines backtracks after an uproar. He'd said Manila's joint drills with the Americans are jeopardizing the safety of its workers in Taiwan. Now he says his remarks were misconstrued. Russia sentences a fierce anti-war critic to 25 years in prison. Vladimir has been found guilty of treason and denigrating the army. The United Nations and the EU have slammed the order, demanding the release of the opposition activist. The Indian government opposes gay marriages in the Supreme Court. It argued that a marriage is quote-unquote an exclusively heterogeneous institution and that petitions asking for same-sex marriages are quote mere urban elitist views. And Rishi Sunak calls for the UK to end its anti-maths mindset. The British Prime Minister says only then can the economy grow. A review will be done on how maths can be taught in schools without making it compulsory. Our lead story tonight is about this number, $8.3 trillion. This is what China's local governments owe to their creditors, $8.3 trillion. This debt pile overshadows the GDP of many nations, from Japan to Germany, India, the United Kingdom and France, among the biggest economies in the world, but no match to China's mountain of debt. For years, investors have been worried about this debt, and somehow China has managed to survive it. But kicking the can down the road is not an option anymore. China is facing the perfect storm of debt. Loans are coming due at home, overseas defaults are growing, and China is under pressure to take a haircut on bad debts. So where is all of this going? Tonight we'll put together the numbers and the trends to find out, and we'll start with China's debt troubles at home. That same $8.3 trillion pile of debt, it's at home. What kind of loans are these? This is borrowing by local governments, loans that were taken off the books to fund infrastructure projects, to support the local economy. These loans have a special name. They're called Local Government Financing Vehicles, or LGFVs for short. And what are these LGFVs? They're special entities. They're created to enable off-the-books borrowing. I know it sounds dodgy, and it is by design. It was supposed to be this way. This method was invented in the 1990s. It's a way for local governments to dodge borrowing rules. Because Beijing had banned local administrations from raising money. So they started circumventing the official channels. And these special entities, or LGFVs, helped them do that. They enabled local governments to borrow from investors both inside China and outside. Now, over the years, local governments got used to the system. The LGFVs became their go-to source to raise cash. And soon the borrowing got out of hand. Loans through LGFVs represent 48% of China's GDP. 48%. These loans are now as big as official government borrowings. Experts call this debt a black hole because they're off the books. So no one really knows the true extent of this problem. And $8.3 trillion is just one estimate. Some experts believe the actual figure is much higher. Either way, this is a problem that cannot be put off anymore. There are talks of a bailout. Some provinces are in financial distress in China. They're lobbying Beijing for a bailout, like the government of Guizhou. Guizhou is among the most indebted governments in China. This month, they sent out an SOS. Local officials published an article online, and I have some quotes from what they published. Due to limited financial resources, it is extremely difficult to advance debt relief work. And it is impossible to effectively solve the debt problem by relying on the local government's own ability. The survey found that debt has become a major and urgent problem facing local governments in the province. This is what they posted online. Do you know what happened next? The post was deleted. Classic Chinese behavior. When officials see a problem, their default response is to cover up. But this is becoming too big and too widespread to hide. In December 2022, a local government was in trouble. It could not keep up with its loans. So it got a partial bailout from lenders. The terms of the loan were rejigged. Short-term loans were turned into long-term debts with lower interest rates and a repayment tenure of 20 years, which basically means lenders will now have to wait longer to get their money back. Because Beijing has refused to help. Beijing refuses to give a bailout to these local governments, and this message has come from the very top. 3 months back, Chinese mouthpieces published this, and they quoted China's Ministry of Finance. I have that copy with me too. Listen to what it says. China will deal with hidden outstanding local government debt in a law-based, market-oriented manner without resorting to central government bailouts. So no bailouts, that's the message from Beijing. The question is why? Why can't China bail out local governments? Because the Chinese state may also be running short of cash. All thanks to the Belt and Road Initiative, the pet project of President Xi Jinping. It has become the Belt and Road of bad loans. The project has come to a grinding halt. There's a string of bad debts. In the last 3 years, debts worth over $78 billion have failed. $78 billion of debts in BRI. These were loans given by Chinese institutions. They were for roads, railways, ports, airports, and other infrastructure projects the world over. And what happened to these loans? They've either been written off or their terms have been renegotiated. And in both cases, the result is the same. China's money is stuck. What's worse, they're under pressure from global institutions. That's the third part of their problem. The likes of the World Bank and IMF, they're all asking China to forgive more debts, especially to poorer nations. And the most prominent case is that of Sri Lanka. Colombo recently got a bailout from the IMF. That's the International Monetary Fund. They're giving $3 billion to Sri Lanka. Last year, the Lankan economy collapsed. There were shortages of all kinds, from medicines to petrol. Protests rocked the country. A president and prime minister were ousted. India stepped up to help Sri Lanka, but China dragged its heels. It's one of the biggest creditors to Sri Lanka. So far, Beijing has refused to waive any loans. And now we know why. Because Beijing is being squeezed. On one side, you have local governments that are in distress, that want money. On the other side, you have overseas debts that are failing. So China, even with its very fat checkbook, cannot foot the bill for every default. Like I said before, this is the perfect storm. And Beijing is trying to avoid it. It may now be a matter of when and not if. One big default and China's debt bubble will burst. This contagion will be hard to contain. For now, Beijing seems more interested in global conflicts. It wants to resolve them, to dictate their outcomes. And it's working with Russia in this direction. Yesterday, there was a meeting in Moscow. President Vladimir Putin met with China's defense minister. And the bonhomie was hard to miss.
Dear Comrade Minister, I am very glad to see you. You arrived in Russia after a visit to our country by our great friend, my friend, Chairman of the People's Republic of China, Comrade Xi Jinping. I want to emphasize once again that the visit was very productive.
продуктивно.
Dear Mr. President, thank you very much for taking the time to meet with me. I know that first of all, today is a day off, and during the weekend, you found time to receive me. This is a great honor for me.
Clearly, Putin is going all out. When it comes to China, he likes to give all engagements a personal touch. But that's not what we want to focus on tonight. Tonight, we're talking about the Chinese defense minister. What is he doing in Russia? His name is Li Shangfu. He's in Moscow just after Xi Jinping's high-profile visit. And when that happened, when Xi met Putin, he made it clear whose side he was on. China is backing Russia. Xi and Putin are aligned on most issues, including their shared mistrust of the West. But the thing with Chinese support is, it never comes for free. There are always strings attached, and Beijing is already pulling them. Listen to this.
The development of China-Russian relations has a clear historical logic and strong endogenous driving force. It has surpassed the military-political alliance model of the Cold War era. It is based on the principles of no alliance, no confrontation, and not targeting any third party, and it is free from interference by any third party. We have established a new model of relationship between major countries.
So Li Shangfu is in Moscow to set the tone for defense engagements. And this is not about military drills. What China wants is Russian defense technology. It wants a no-holds-barred access to Russian wares. Neither side has shared the specifics, but there are clear telltale signs. China wants access to advanced Russian military tech, and Russia seems more than willing to share. In fact, let's go back to Xi Jinping's visit to Russia. Xi and Putin met for formal talks. There was a large Russian delegation present. This included top Russian defense officials. And these were people directly involved in Russia's weapons and space programs. The list includes Dmitry Medvedev, the deputy chairman of Russia's Security Council. He served as president of Russia for 4 years, from 2008 to 2012, because Putin could not serve a third straight term. So he kept the seat warm for his boss, and that should tell you how loyal he is to Vladimir Putin. He was also Putin's first deputy in the Military Industrial Commission. And this commission is a permanent body. It was set up to coordinate with 3 important arms of the Russian state: the Defense Ministry, the Armed Forces, and the defense industry. So Dmitry Medvedev was present in the meeting with Xi Jinping. Do you know who else was there to meet him? Sergei Shoigu, Russia's defense minister; Dmitry Shugayev, the head of the Federal Service for Military Technical Cooperation; and Yuri Borisov, the head of Russia's space agency. Before taking this job, Borisov was in charge of the Russian defense industry. He served on that post for at least a decade. And all of these officials were present in the meeting with the Chinese president. According to one report, more than half of Putin's team that was present that day was linked to Russia's defense industry. And that alone should tell you where the priorities lie. Which brings us to the next question. Why does China want Russian defense tech? Because China seems to be making a lot of weapons of its own, like drones. So why do they need help from the Russians? They need help because when it comes to certain conventional weapons, China is no match for Russia. Reports say China wants Russian defense technology for surface-to-air missiles, engines for fighter jets, submarines, and submersible drones. That's what China wants. What about Russia? What does Russia want? Among other things, it wants components to make weapons. Western sanctions have cut off Russia's access to key supplies, so China has stepped up. It is supplying a number of components to Russia. Last week, in fact, the Ukrainians made a claim. They've captured many Russian weapons, they opened them up, and they found Chinese components inside those weapons. What kind of components? Like microchips for weapons, parts for tanks, parts for drone navigation systems. Western sanctions have pushed Russia deeper into China's camp. Russia and China will make weapons together. And Ukraine could be the testing ground for this new defense partnership. And the West needs to be wary of this because the same weapons could turn up in a different battleground, like Taiwan. So China's partnership with Russia is getting stronger. But its iron brotherhood with Pakistan is being tested. A major row has erupted. Pakistan has arrested a Chinese national. He is being accused of insulting Allah. An angry mob is up in arms. This arrest has snowballed into a major crisis. It happened in a town called Komela. This is in Pakistan's Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province. The province shares a border with Afghanistan, and this is the man who was arrested there. The local cops identify him as Mr. Tian. Reports say he's a Chinese engineer, Mr. Tian. He was working on a hydropower project in this region. And why specifically was he arrested? Apparently, he was involved in a workplace argument. You see, two Pakistani workers complained against him. They'd gone for Ramadan prayers. They came back late. And this led to a heated argument, a heated conversation with Tian. And it was during this conversation that the Chinese is said to have insulted Islam. That's what the Pakistani workers say. And so Tian, the Chinese engineer, has been arrested. And this was bad enough, but the story did not end there. Soon, news of Tian's arrest spread to nearby villages. And it led to more anger. Hundreds of men took to the streets. They blocked a key highway and chanted slogans. The mob had come with a clear intent. They wanted to take the law in their hands and punish this Chinese man. The police intervened. First, they fired warning shots in the air. Then they spoke to the protesters. Assurances were given that action will be taken against him. But this morning, tensions flared again. Reports say the protesters returned this morning. The highway was blocked again. Now, this is a volatile situation. An investigation is underway. But for 3 days now, tensions have been high. Mobs have taken to the streets. People are angry. Because blasphemy is a sensitive issue in Pakistan. It's a non-bailable offense and it's punishable by death. More often than not, allegations of blasphemy lead to mob attacks. In fact, I have some data. Since 1947, the year Pakistan was formed, it has reported a total of 1,415 blasphemy cases. These were the ones that were reported. And in the last 7 odd decades, 18 women and 71 men accused of blasphemy have been killed by angry mobs. But such charges against foreign nationals are rare. And when they do happen, they tend to lead to dangerous outcomes. For example, in December 2021, a Sri Lankan factory manager was accused of blasphemy. This happened in Pakistan's Punjab province. The charges were said to be false, but they led to a mob attack. The factory manager was beaten to death. His co-workers were behind the attack. Then we have the infamous case of Asia Bibi. She's a Pakistani Christian. She spent 8 years on death row, again on charges of blasphemy. She was acquitted finally in 2019, but the verdict led to violent protests across the country. Asia Bibi and her family received death threats. She was forced to leave Pakistan. She now lives in Canada with her family. And those same radical sentiments are now driving the outrage against this Chinese national. A police complaint has been filed. Like I said, an investigation is already underway. As of this afternoon, there was no official comment from China or Pakistan. But some reports have emerged. They say the Chinese national has now been moved. Earlier today, a Pakistani army chopper took him to Abbottabad. Will Beijing intervene to save the life of its citizen? Either way, it's another rude reminder of the perils of operating in Pakistan. This is a developing story. We'll keep track for you. And now let's shift our focus to the Sudan. It's a sub-Saharan African nation of 48 million people. It's been under military rule for decades. It has rival armed groups fighting each other. And now the factionalism has led to bloodshed. Intense fighting is on in the Sudan. Almost 100 people have been killed. And this includes at least one Indian national. More than 1,100 people have been injured. The army is conducting airstrikes in the Sudanese capital of Khartoum. Earlier, explosions rocked the Khartoum airport. Smoke was seen billowing from the site. Sudan's capital is under siege. Listen to what eyewitnesses have to say.
I was asleep. Suddenly, I heard a lot of big sounds, like bullets, rockets. I don't know what is it. I can't leave the house. Very dangerous outside. The military is everywhere. I don't know who are they. It's miserable. I can't imagine what's gonna happen if I leave my home.
A lot of people, they are going by walking, they are going with their bags. Many of the people, they are loading the stuff from supermarket. They are going in their car, and many of them, they were hitchhiking in another vehicles to escape the city.
To understand what's going on, let's take a step back to see how it all started. Sudan gained independence from the British and the Egyptians in the year 1956. This country has been governed by both nations the Brits and the Egyptians together before 1956. And since independence, the Sudan has seen several military dictatorships. The longest was under Field Marshal Omar al-Bashir. He reigned from 1989 to 2019. That's when he was deposed and incarcerated in 2019. And presently, the country is under the thumb of a man called Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, another military ruler. He is the chairman of a so-called Transitional Sovereignty Council. Burhan made his bones in the Second Sudanese Civil War between 1983 and 2005, and also in the Darfur conflict. You see, the Sudan is no stranger to internal violence, especially in the southwestern Darfur region. It has seen armed groups clash with government forces since the year 2003. The rebels accused Sudan's government, Arab government, of ethnic cleansing. So the non-Arab population took up arms. Sudan's military, under officers like Burhan, fought the rebels. But it wasn't just the military. Pro-government armed groups also fought the non-Arabs. And the conflict in Darfur gave birth to powerful warlords. They had their own private armies. One of these was called the Janjaweed militia. Their leader was a man called Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, also known as Hemeti. The word Janjaweed has been translated to English as devils on horseback. It was reportedly one of the most brutal groups in the Sudan. The US says they killed anywhere between 200 to 400,000 people. And this was just in 3 years, from 2003 to 2006. The UN Security Council called for the Janjaweed militia to be disarmed. That did not happen. But in 2013, they were rebranded. Since then, they've been called the Rapid Support Forces, RSF. It officially became a paramilitary group. And it came under the nominal leadership of the Sudanese government. But that's all an eyewash. It's an armed group of over 100,000 soldiers. They report directly to their leader, Hemeti. And that's where today's problems began. The Sudan's current ruler, Burhan, has been looking at how to transition into a democratic government. And if they do, when they do, what happens to the paramilitary groups like RSF? How will they be integrated into Sudan's armed forces? Who will lead them after the merger? Hemeti, it seems, did not want to wait to find out. His troops started deploying around the country last week, and clashes between the RSF and Sudan's military began on Saturday. Now, leaders around the world are calling for a ceasefire. The Arab League, for one, held an emergency session yesterday to call for peace.
My country's delegation urges all Sudanese parties to immediately cease all armed clashes to prevent loss of life and ensure the safety and security of civilians, as well as preserve the potential of the Sudanese people. We caution against the danger of escalating violence in Sudan and the unpredictable consequences that may ensue both domestically and regionally.
The African Union's peace and security body also met to discuss the Sudan. This is what the US and the UK said from a G7 meeting in Japan.
There is a shared deep concern about the fighting, the violence that's going on in Sudan, the threat that poses to civilians, that it poses to the Sudanese nation, and potentially poses even to the region. There's also a very strongly shared view about the need for Generals Burhan and Hemeti to ensure the protection of civilians and non-combatants, as well as people from third countries, including our personnel who are located in Sudan.
But I echo the points that have been made already by Secretary Blinken, that we call upon an immediate cessation of violence, a return to the talks which seem to be heading in the direction of civilian government, and of course that is the ultimate desired outcome.
The Sudan has asked international forces to not interfere. Both the army and the RSF say they have the upper hand. As the warlords trade fire, it's the people who once again fearing for their lives. And in these power games, the biggest loser is the prospect of a peaceful, democratic Sudan. Our world is a happening place. 200-odd countries, scores of issues, military and economic wars, protests, breakthroughs, pandemics. The most dramatic events capture the mind space. And in the process, some very significant but gradual shifts remain below the radar. Tonight we'll talk about one such. As the world remains caught up with Russia's war and China's expansionism, Saudi Arabia is making important moves. In fact, let me walk you through some recent developments. First, Saudi Arabia and Iran, sworn enemies, Sunni and Shia states, they decided to bury the hatchet and engage. Second, peace talks began in Yemen. It suffered a war for over a decade, a proxy war between Iran and Saudi Arabia, and now peace stands a chance. Third, Syria's isolation is ending. It's being welcomed back to the Arab fold. And fourth, Saudi Arabia is siding with Russia on oil production, consistently refusing to toe the American line. All these moves are courtesy one man, MBS, Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, also the de facto ruler of the kingdom. What is he trying to do here? He's trying to forge unity in the region. He wants to bring West Asia together as a common front on the global stage. So when headlines said that Saudi Arabia will engage with the Hamas, it seemed like the obvious next step. Their ties have been frosty since 2007 and Riyadh was trying to revive them. So a Hamas delegation was invited. But at the last moment, some reports said that Saudi Arabia did not grant them visas, which seemed a bit odd. Why would you invite a group and not give them permission to enter the country? Well, that question has a one-word answer: America. Apparently, engaging with the Hamas was a step too far, and the US put pressure on the Saudis to abandon the plan. Let me put this in context. The Hamas is an armed group. It is fighting for Palestinian statehood. The US calls it a terrorist organization. So does Israel. Most others call it a militant group. But the Hamas sees itself as a political party. It rules the Gaza Strip. The Gaza Strip is a Palestinian enclave surrounded by Israel and Egypt. Hamas has members in other territories too, like Syria. And this group is backed by Iran, Israel's perpetual foe. Every once in a while, when tensions flare up between Israel and Palestine, the Hamas attacks. It fires rockets at Israel and then it faces retaliation. So Hamas is an enemy both for the US and Israel. And the Saudis inviting this group sent alarm bells ringing. The US drew a line in the sand and the visit of the Hamas delegation has been cancelled. Sources say pressure from Washington is the primary reason behind this cancellation, but there are two other reasons too. Two other sources of opposition: Israel and the West Bank. Let's explain and understand. Israel first. It doesn't have a formal relationship with the Saudis, but it does have informal engagements. In the last few years, many Arab nations recognized Israel. It happened with Saudi Arabia's blessings. So it's a delicate, covert relationship. The Saudis hosting Hamas would have hurt it. The second source of opposition could be the West Bank. It's a Palestinian region ruled by the Fatah party. Their president is called Mahmoud Abbas. As we speak, he's in Saudi Arabia. And the Fatah and the Hamas are rivals. So hosting both the groups at the same time would have been complicated. These two factors could have played a role, but finally, it seems the Americans had the last word. Their relationship with Riyadh has been poor of late. Saudi Arabia has snubbed the US on many occasions, but this time, it was perhaps not worth the risk. Hosting Hamas may not be worth inviting America's ire. And Saudi Arabia is playing this game quite carefully, working with new partners like China and Russia, engaging with old foes like Iran and Syria, but not antagonizing the Americans completely. After all, the Saudi defense establishment is still largely dependent on the US. The European Union is a union of European nations. Not all of them, but 27 of them. You already know that. They form the EU. They like to believe they're united. Perhaps not on all issues, but at least on Ukraine. And on how they respond to Russia's invasion. But even that is proving to be quite difficult. The war is testing this union, and how. They're at loggerheads again, this time with Poland and Hungary. Both these countries are EU members, and both have banned the imports of Ukrainian grain. A third country may join them soon. Romania is also planning to impose such a ban. They don't want Ukrainian grain. And the EU is fuming. Our next report explains.
These were the scenes that played out on the roads of Romania earlier this month. These people are farmers. They're protesting against the import of Ukrainian grains. It's flooding markets in Eastern Europe. There's an excess supply of grain courtesy Ukraine, and it has led to a fall in prices. Local farmers are upset. Their earnings have nosedived. What makes it more difficult for them is the fact that Ukrainian grain is cheaper.
I know our Ukrainian colleagues also need to sell, but it is unfair competition, however.
It's the same story in Poland and Hungary. They decided to take matters into their own hands. They have banned the imports of Ukrainian grain to protect their own farmers. Hungary said it was following Poland's lead and restricting the import of Ukrainian grain. It blamed the absence of meaningful EU measures for its decision. What measures is Hungary talking about? Well, last month, the prime ministers of Poland, Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria, and Slovakia approached the EU. They wanted the Union to stop the influx of Ukrainian grain into Europe and also reinstate tariffs. The tariffs were removed last year after Russia invaded Ukraine. The farmers of Eastern Europe want them back. But the European Union is not on board. It's not happy with the ban that Poland and Hungary have imposed. The EU's executive arm, the European Commission, shot off a mail on Sunday. It accused Poland and Hungary of overstepping their authority and said that matters of trade policy were a matter of EU-exclusive competence. It said that unilateral actions are not acceptable. Strong words from the EU, but not strong enough to convince Poland and Hungary to undo the ban, because both these countries are facing the ire of their farmers, and farmers are a strong constituency. No country wants to fight their citizens to please the EU. Worse still, they don't want to appear to be serving Ukraine's exclusive interests at the cost of their own people. And while European countries wrestle with each other, Ukraine has more pressing concerns. The fate of the Black Sea grain deal is hanging in the balance. It allows Ukraine to export its grains. Now, Russia has issued a threat. Unless its demands are met, it won't honor the grain deal.
The deal was extended for just 60 days and not fully, solely due to the fact that exactly half of this deal did not work and still does not work. We know that UN representatives are making certain efforts, but they are not succeeding, and the second half of the deal is still not working. These conditions are not being met. No deal can stand on one leg. It must stand on two legs. In this regard, of course, judging by the state of play today, the outlook for the extension is not so great.
And what are Russia's demands? It wants its agricultural bank to be re-included into the global SWIFT banking system. Russia also wants some sanctions lifted. These are sanctions on Russian food and fertilizer products. The West is in no mood to oblige, and this will decide the fate of the grain deal and food prices across the world. Russia and Ukraine are top producers of food grains. They supply across the world, especially to developing countries. As of last month, 23 million tons of grain and food products were supplied through the Black Sea Grain Initiative. And 65% of the wheat exported went to developing countries alone. So if Russia suspends the deal, food prices will rise again. Also, Ukraine's economy will take a big hit. Unfortunately for Kyiv, it's not just Russia which is hurting it. Its supposed friends in Eastern Europe are openly prioritizing their own interests.
Many say new year, new beginning, but for Iran, that's clearly not the case. A new wave of poisonous gas attacks is underway in the country. It comes after the New Year holiday break and scores of arrests last month. The target is once again school-going girls. In the month of April alone, this month, at least 44 attacks have been reported in Iran. These are chemical attacks. They began in November last year, and since then, more than 7,000 children have been affected. 7,000 children. And now they're falling ill again. Their families are outraged. People have taken to the streets, riots have erupted, shotguns and tear gas have been fired, and this has only fueled the anger further. But President Ibrahim Raisi's government is keeping its pretenses intact. Here's more. Iranian schoolgirls are being poisoned again, and public fury has reignited. Over the weekend, hundreds took to the streets. They clashed with the police and were brutally repressed with tear gas and shotguns. This happened outside the education department of Shaheen Sheher. It's the central province of the Iranian city Isfahan, also one of the worst hit. But the chemical attacks are not limited to it. They've occurred all over the nation. They began in November last year. The first cases emerged in the city of Qom, when nationwide anti-hijab protests sweep through Iran. The government cracked down hard on the protesters. But women and girls have continued to defy strict hijab laws. And these uprisings have rocked the nation. Since then, at least 290 schools have been attacked, thousands of children have been poisoned, hundreds have been hospitalized, and the attacks keep coming in waves. Last month, 110 people were arrested on suspicion of links to the attacks, though no one has been charged yet. And in a first, Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei publicly condemned the incidents.
This is an important issue. If there are really hands involved and people, groups are involved in this matter, this is a big and unforgivable crime. And they must be condemned to severe punishments. It is a serious and unforgivable crime. There will be no amnesty for them.
This put the attacks on pause, but did not stop them. Now a new wave of chemical attacks is underway. It began this month, and at least 44 cases have been reported already. Observers call these attacks part of an extremist response, a way for the government to tackle the mass anti-hijab protests. Some say children are falling ill without a real cause. Others say that Islamist extremist groups could be behind this, because they're opposed to educating girls. But this sounds unusual, because girls' education had never been contested or attacked in Iran. So speculation is wide-ranging. But the most shocking reason is coming from President Ibrahim Raisi's government. A minister said only a few cases have been reported, but even those that have been are a quote-unquote mischief of students so they can bunk classes. And how surprising is this really? Because Iran continues to downplay the number of poisonings. They say about 1,000 children have been poisoned, while human rights organizations say the number is well over 7,000. The explanation for these illnesses remains a mystery. But one thing is quite clear, the government is failing to act and the world is paying attention. People from countries across the world have rallied in solidarity with Iranian women, including the US, Canada, Europe, Turkey, and India. Governments have announced sanctions against the morality police, so the supreme leader should be worried, because attacks on children are bringing grown-ups to the streets, and Khamenei cannot do away with this problem with a viral speech. Our planet is a water world. 70% of the Earth's surface is covered by it. Yet we know so little about what goes on underneath. So tonight, let's turn our attention to the ocean. It is vast and enigmatic, and it has a leak. There's a hole in the ocean bed. It's off the coast of Oregon in the US, and it's leaking. Sounds fascinating, but scientists are worried. Some are even calling it the harbinger of doom. This leak could trigger a massive earthquake. It has been predicted, feared, and even raved over. Some experts say it can shift our poles and wipe off Los Angeles entirely. Here's a report.
The big one is making headlines again. But beware, it's a cute nickname for some serious doom and gloom. It has welcomed some big what-ifs, also some existential humor. Now, a small hole is creating giant problems for it. Before we ambush you with any more adjectives, let's tell you what is the big one. Its official name is Cascadia Subduction Zone Earthquake. Yes, an earthquake, and a very large one. It can occur in the Cascadia Subduction Zone. This is a 960-kilometer fault off the Pacific shore, capable of producing earthquakes of over 9 magnitude. Here's a fun fact. The big one is expected to happen, but no one knows when. Scientists say it can happen within the next 100 years. But a new problem may invite it sooner. And it has everything to do with a leak, which is happening in a quake-prone region. There is a hole at the bottom of the ocean. It's in the seabed off the coast of Oregon, a state in the US, located on the Pacific Northwest sea floor. Scientists say that a hole like this has never been seen before. The world has known about it since 2015. That's when it was first discovered. It's called Pythias Oasis, named after an oracle. He's known to have hallucinated prophecies while sitting on a hot spring. So maybe this naming logic does make sense, because this is a mineral-rich spring. Now the University of Washington has come out with new research. This hole is leaking, releasing water that's almost fresh, but not into the earth, upwards into the ocean. And water is coming out of the seabed like a hose. The study says this leak could trigger a big, bad earthquake. The internet even has a name for it, the Harbinger of Doom. Some say it could be one of the worst natural disasters ever. Others think Los Angeles could be wiped off the map. Some even say there can be a global pole shift. But don't start building your bunkers yet. Why? Because none of this is backed by science. So what do the experts say? This leak is releasing a fluid from the fault zone. Think of it as a leaking lubricant, and that's bad news, especially for earthquakes. A lack of this lubricant can build stress under the Earth's surface, leading to an earthquake. But research is still underway. We don't know much about the potential dangers yet, or how bad they could be. So while we can relax for the next couple of decades, this is surely a scary reminder. Because a large quake was felt along the fault in this region. It has been 323 years since that happened. Scientists say another one may be long overdue. And with this ocean bed leak, the sands of time may also be leaking faster than you may think.
Our next story is from India, of how India is emerging as a global manufacturing hub. And tonight, we're not talking about just another manufacturer, we're talking about tech giant Apple. It is completing 25 years in India and it has big plans for this market. This week, Apple CEO Tim Cook will be in India. He's inaugurating the first Apple stores in the country. So far, Apple sold products in India through local partners. Tim Cook will also attend some high-profile meetings while he's here, like one with Prime Minister Narendra Modi, also India's Electronics and IT Minister Ashwini Vaishnav. And the agenda of these meetings is pretty clear. Apple wants to increase its manufacturing base in India. Apple wants to make in India and ship across the world. And this is a major shift because so far, China has been the hub of Apple's manufacturing operations. But as the world decouples with the dragon, India is emerging as a compelling alternative. So Apple is looking to manufacture in India and it's opening stores. It's also working with Indian app developers. Apple says it supports 1 million developer jobs in India. And reports say India will push Apple to make more iPhones here. Right now, Apple has 3 manufacturing partners in India, Foxconn, Pegatron and Wistron. And they're all expanding their India operations. They're shifting 12 to 18% of Apple's total iPhone assembly operations from China to India. 12 to 18%. Already, key Apple products are being made in India, like the iPhone. 5% of the world's iPhones are now made in India. By 2027, Apple wants to boost this number by 10 times. It wants to make 50% of its iPhones in India. So Apple is bullish when it comes to India, and the company's India pivot did not happen overnight. They began working on this in 2016, only now they're accelerating. That's because the shift away from China has become inevitable. Tim Cook's love affair with China is well known. In 2015, he'd explained why Apple makes its devices in China. Let me quote from what he'd said. The number one reason why we like to be in China is the people. China has extraordinary skills. This is Tim Cook speaking. The products we do require really advanced tooling and the precision that you have to have. The tooling and working with the materials that we do are state of the art. And the tooling skill is very deep here. In the US, you could have a meeting of tooling engineers and I'm not sure we could fill the room. In China, you could fill multiple football fields. So that's why Tim Cook wanted to be in China. And he has no intentions of giving up on Beijing just yet. Last month, in fact, he was again in China. He met with the Chinese premier. He hailed what he called Apple's symbiotic relationship with the country. It was a word of assurance. It was basically a message to Beijing that Apple will not completely abandon China. But like every businessman, Tim Cook must contend with the present-day geopolitical realities. Tensions between Washington and Beijing are at an all-time high. The US has slapped a slew of sanctions on Chinese manufacturers. And the situation in the Taiwan Strait is even more volatile. Apple cannot afford to be caught in the crosshairs of a US-China fight, which is why it is keen on expanding in India. As far as Apple is concerned, this diversification is the need of the hour. And India is a clear beneficiary of this pivot. And India should make the most of it. It should use the case of Apple and lure more vulnerable businesses away from China. And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. We're starting with Israel. Tens of thousands of protesters took to the streets in the city of Tel Aviv. They protested against the government's judicial reforms. Meanwhile, wildfires are raging in Spain. Huge clouds of smoke engulf the skies above northern Catalonia. China is witnessing a similar situation. A wildfire broke out in the Yunnan province. In the United States, a man relaxing in his chair was caught off guard by a bear. It's hard to say who was surprised more. And finally, what happened today in history? Apollo 13 spacecraft returned to Earth safely. The year was 1970. The world was anxiously watching this mission. It's because the three-man spacecraft suffered a severe malfunction on its journey to the moon. An oxygen tank blew up. Stabilizing the oxygen supply became a huge logistical problem. But 5 days, 22 hours, and 55 minutes into the mission, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. We're leaving you with this. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.
No distance of 3,919 nautical miles.
Photo 1 observes splice down at this time. On pickup, parity. Roger. Astronaut is on his way up.
They certainly look great.